After going through this video, you will be able to create an HTML element using React. Hi, welcome back. In the previous topic, we learned about React and how it is used to build user interfaces. In this topic, we will see how we can create an HTML element using React. We know that a JavaScript library contains some predefined functions that help us to accomplish complex syntax with ease. Similarly, in React, we have two such libraries, React and React DOM, that contain create element function and render function respectively. These functions collectively are used to create an HTML element. Let us understand these functions one by one in detail, starting with the create element inside the React library. In React, the name of the function is always preceded by the library name inside which it is present. Like in this case, we have the name of the function as react.createElement. So, create element is the name of the function which is present inside the React library. There are numerous things which we can do with React, but as we are a beginner level student, let us start with the simplest example to understand, because once a solid foundation is built, everything later will seem easy. So, say we want to create a heading for a page using the h1html tag, and this is a heading for the page. The first step is to create a React element object, or we call it a JavaScript object. So here we are calling the react.createElement function, and whatever it returns, we are storing it in a variable named heading. The second step is to pass the arguments. This function takes 3 arguments. The first argument is a string that represents the type of HTML element we want to create. The second argument is expected to be a JavaScript object that contains all the attributes that we want the HTML element to have. And lastly, the third argument is a string that represents the content that will go inside the element. We can also add a child element instead of content as an argument, which we will see later in this video. Now, if you think that this piece of code is sufficient to create an HTML element in React, we are missing something important. Remember, earlier in this video we said that to create an HTML element, we need two functions, create element and render. So far, we have only used the create element function that is used to create a JavaScript object that describes the element which we want to create. Let us see in what way the render function helps us to create an HTML element. It helps us to render and display the React element object on the web page. So, what we need to do is to pass the JavaScript object which we created using the create element function as an argument like this. See, the first argument here is the React element or the JavaScript object. The second argument is the HTML element from the DOM, inside which we want to create this new element. The document.getElement by ID React container will fetch the HTML element with ID equal to the React container. This is the container element inside which the new element will be rendered by React. It is okay if this syntax seems difficult at this moment, just give it some time. You will be able to understand things more clearly as we progress along in this module. Before we proceed any further, let us see the full-blown code which we have written until now. It will give us a fresh perspective to understand what we have done so far. This is our HTML code. We have our page title, then we have our CSS file. We have added a few styling to the sheet. This CSS works exactly the same way that you have learned in this training. So don't worry about the code, you can copy it from below the video. This is the container element which we were talking about a few moments ago. Then we have the React libraries and the custom JavaScript file. Now, let us look at the code of the custom JavaScript file, app.js, in which we have our React code. This part corresponds to the create element function and this part for the render function. I hope things are clear at this point. So let us run this code. In our browser's address, we will enter 127.0.0.1 slash react project slash index.html. As for React, we have created a new project folder, so don't forget to update the file path in the address bar. We get the output as expected, nothing new in this. Well, there is something new, and to find it, we need to dig a little bit. Let us open the page source and see if you can find anything odd or missing. Pause the video and take your time to find the missing thing out. If you look carefully, there is no h1 tag in the code, but there is a h1 tag in the web page. How is it possible? The answer to this question we have discussed in the first topic of the JavaScript module. See if you can recall it. The reason we can't see the h1 tag is because it is added to the web page by the JavaScript after the response has come from the web server, and that's how React works. And if we see the inspect element, we can see the h1 element is present inside the React container with all the attributes we have provided. This is because the inspect element shows the code as it is at that moment. Now, another important thing, we should notice that if we add anything inside the React container, like I'm adding some random text, the render file will replace the entire text with the newly created element. And if we view the page source, we can see the text we entered. All this change of text happens after the response has come from the server. So this code was all about creating a single HTML inside a React container. Suppose we want to add another element or a group of elements inside a React container. How can we do this? Well, the approach is similar to what we have followed previously. So, let me see how many steps you have remembered for creating an HTML element. Similar to what we did for the heading element, we will create a new element for the paragraph. Here, we have our function, then we have p as the first argument as the element type is a paragraph. As we are not adding any attribute to this element, so we will pass null as an argument. Please note that the null is without the inverted commas. And in the third argument, we will pass the paragraph content. Now that we have created the paragraph element, we need to create one container element, that is div, to keep both the heading and paragraph elements together inside a single element. This is because we can render only one element inside the React container. To do this, we will use the create element function. The first argument we will pass is the name of the element, that is div. In the second argument, to add a class attribute to any HTML element, we will have to use class name instead of class, as a class is a reserved keyword in JavaScript, which has some special meaning. So inside the curly braces, we add the class name as box like this. Now pay attention, as this is important and new information. Earlier in the video, we talked that we can pass the child element as the third argument. But here, we have two child elements, that is heading and paragraph. So we will pass the heading and paragraph as third and fourth argument respectively, as these are child to the div element. So this makes our total number of arguments to 4. Please note that it is not a rule or defined anywhere that we can have only 3 arguments. We can have n number of arguments as it depends from code to code. Also, all the elements will be added to the div element in the same order as we are passing them in the arguments. So, suppose if we pass the paragraph argument first and then the heading argument, they will be created in the order we have added, that is paragraph first and heading second. Next, we will render the box object instead of the headings object, because if we do that, only the headings element will get created. Let us run the code. Here we go. We can see the heading and the paragraph HTML elements. To summarize, we generalize the heading and paragraph HTML elements inside the box element through React functions. And then, using the React DOM.render function, we added the elements inside our HTML. After watching this video, you might wonder or feel that the code we have written to create 3 simple HTML elements is very complicated. But let me assure you, as we progress, things will become simple and you will understand the significance of why we are using React. So that's it for this video. Hope you had fun learning. Up next is a quiz. All the best.